It is exactly 8:43 on a Friday night. You are standing in the center of your living room, staring down at the glowing rectangle of your phone. Your thumb hovers over the send button for a fraction of a second, and then you press it. Sorry, feeling a bit under the weather tonight. Have a drink for me. You lock the screen. You place the device face down on the kitchen counter. And then you wait for it. You wait for that heavy, familiar wave of guilt that society tells you that you are supposed to feel. The guilt of stepping off the conveyor belt. The guilt of choosing the silence of your cramped, overpriced office over the chaotic, neon-drenched streets of the city. Outside your window, down on the pavement below, the world is operating at maximum capacity. You can see the erratic flashing of a GS25 convenience store sign, painting the wet asphalt in shades of artificial blue. You can see the groups of office workers, their ties loosened, crowding around aluminum tables, pouring cheap green bottles of soju, desperately trying to force a sense of connection into the exhausted margins of their week. They are chasing the Friday night. They are doing what is expected. But inside your apartment, you do something else. You walk over to the wall switch and you turn off the harsh overhead lights. The sterile, fluorescent glare disappears. You reach over and turn on a single, low-wattage amber desk lamp. The room shrinks. The shadows soften the edges of your furniture. The air itself seems to become heavier, thicker, safer. And right then, in that exact moment, the guilt vanishes. It is replaced by a physical sensation so profound, so intensely relieving, that it almost feels medicinal. Your shoulders drop. The tension in your jaw dissolves. A deep, silent exhale empties your lungs. For the longest time, you thought there was something fundamentally wrong with you. You thought you were broken. You thought you were antisocial. You thought that your constant desire to retreat, to cancel plans at the last minute, to invent excuses just to stare at your own ceiling was a character flaw. Society has a very specific script, and you have been reading the wrong lines. The world romantically glorifies the act of being outside. Every billboard, every social media feed, every casual conversation at the office water cooler pushes a singular narrative. To be happy is to be visible. Happiness is defined by the crowded room, the loud music, the endless networking, the curated moments of forced socialization. The cultural baseline assumes that if you are not out there consuming experiences and interacting with bodies, you are somehow failing at the concept of living. We are conditioned to believe that staying home is synonymous with sadness. We are told that isolation is the enemy of a life well lived. But as you stand in the amber glow of your living room, listening to the faint, muffled rumble of the subway line vibrating deep beneath the concrete foundation of your building, you realize the truth. You are not avoiding people. You have never been avoiding people. You are simply protecting your energy. Think about the sheer amount of mental currency you spend just existing in the outside world. Think about the subway commute at rush hour, transferring at Cinderim Station, the physical pressure of strangers pressed against your shoulders, the erratic movements, the visual noise of advertisements, the necessity of maintaining a polite, neutral expression while someone invades your personal space. Think about the social obligations, the superficial conversations where words are exchanged but absolutely nothing is said, the constant hypervigilant monitoring of your own reactions, making sure you smile at the right time, making sure you laugh at the joke, making sure your tone implies enthusiasm when your mind is entirely empty. It is a performance, and performances are exhausting. You look at the people down on the street, the extroverts. For them, the city is a generator. They draw their power from the friction of the crowd. They walk into a crowded room and their internal battery physically charges from the scattered energy of the people around them. They require the external chaos to regulate their internal state. Without it, they feel empty. But your architecture is entirely different. For you, social interaction is an expenditure. It is a transaction where you are always paying out. Every conversation costs something. Every crowded room takes a percentage of your battery. Every forced smile, every loud noise, every unpredictable variable in the social landscape drains your reserves. You are not broken for feeling exhausted by this. You are simply recognizing your own energetic economy. When your battery hits zero, you do not need more people to recharge. You need the exact opposite. You need the absence of expectation. You need the profound, empty canvas of silence. Your apartment is not a hiding place. It is a charging station. As you walk toward the kitchen to begin the quiet ritual of boiling water, your mind starts connecting the dots. You start to understand the actual mechanics of your own mind. You are discovering what psychologists refer to as the optimal arousal theory. It is not magic. It is not a moral failing. It is biology. The theory dictates that every single human being has a unique, specific baseline for how much external stimulation their nervous system requires to feel comfortable. And some people are born with a high threshold. Their baseline is naturally low, meaning they feel understimulated in quiet environments. They feel restless. They feel bored. To reach their optimal state of comfort, they must actively seek out high-intensity inputs. They need the booming bass of a nightclub. They need the rapid-fire arguments. They need the adrenaline of the unpredictable. If they do not get that stimulation, their brain interprets the silence as a threat. But your nervous system operates on a completely different frequency. You possess a low stimulation preference. Your baseline is already incredibly active. Your internal world is loud. Your thoughts are constant, intricate, and deeply layered. You process details that other people simply walk past. You notice the slight change in a colleague's tone of voice. You feel the heavy atmospheric pressure of a crowded elevator. You absorb the emotional weight of a room the second you cross the threshold, because your internal processing is already running at maximum capacity. Adding excessive external stimulation, loud noises, bright lights, unpredictable social dynamics, pushes you immediately from a state of balance into a state of severe sensory overload. You are not afraid of the world outside. You are simply highly sensitive to its volume. The water begins to boil. You pour it over the loose tea leaves in your favorite ceramic mug. You watch the dark amber color bleed into the clear water. It is a tiny, insignificant action. But to you, right now, it is profound, because it represents the one thing that the outside world absolutely refuses to give you: control. The external world is an environment of chaos. It is fundamentally unpredictable. When you step out of your front door, you surrender your autonomy to the environment. You cannot control the screeching metal of the subway brakes. You cannot control the stranger who bumps into your shoulder and refuses to apologize. You cannot control the sudden, torrential downpour of rain or the agonizingly slow pace of the person walking in front of you. You cannot control the direction of a conversation when an acquaintance corners you at a coffee shop. You are constantly at the mercy of variables you did not choose. But inside this apartment, inside these four walls that cost you half your monthly salary and a massive, anxiety-inducing wool's deposit just to secure, you are the absolute architect of reality. You control the lighting. You control the ambient temperature. You control the exact volume of the lo-fi instrumental track playing softly from your desktop speakers. If you want absolute silence, you command it. If you want to wear faded sweatpants that have lost their shape, there is no judgment. If you want to sit on the floor instead of the couch, there are no social norms to violate. For someone whose nervous system is highly sensitive to unpredictable variables, this level of environmental control is not a luxury. It is a fundamental psychological necessity. It is the only way your brain can finally register safety. It is the only way your sympathetic nervous system can stop scanning for threats and finally power down. This apartment is your fortress. It is the designated sanctuary where the rules of the chaotic world are permanently suspended. But as you take the first sip of your tea, feeling the warmth spread down your chest, you force yourself to confront the darker side of this isolation, because you are honest with yourself. And you know that the line between a sanctuary and a prison is dangerously thin. You walk over to the small mirror hanging by the entranceway. You look at your own reflection in the dim light. You have to ask yourself the hard question, the uncomfortable question. Are you staying home tonight because it heals you? Or are you staying home because you are terrified? There is a profound difference between a healthy retreat and a trauma response. There are times, and you know this, because you have lived it, when the locked door is not a boundary against exhaustion, but a barrier constructed by fear. There are people who stay home because the social anxiety has paralyzed them. There are people who let the days bleed into weeks without stepping outside because the heavy, suffocating blanket of depression has convinced them that they are unworthy of taking up space in the world. In those moments, the apartment is not a charging station. It is a quarantine. You know what that feels like. The isolation that slowly turns into an echo chamber where your darkest thoughts bounce off the walls and amplify until they are the only truth you can hear. You know the danger of avoiding the world simply because interacting with it feels too heavy to bear. You stare at the mirror. You evaluate the weight in your chest. Is this fear? You take a deep breath. No, not tonight. Tonight, the decision to close the door feels expansive, not restrictive. You do not feel the hollow ache of avoidance. You feel the solid, grounding weight of intentional solitude. You are not hiding from life. You are simply choosing a different medium through which to experience it. You walk away from the mirror and move toward the window. You lean your forehead against the cold glass. Down below, the Friday night is reaching its chaotic peak. You watch it all happen like a silent movie playing in another dimension. You realize that your love for staying home is intrinsically linked to your capacity for observation. When you strip away the desperate need to perform socially, your brain is suddenly free to process on a much deeper level. There is a reason why artists, writers, thinkers, and creators often isolate themselves. The noise of the crowd drowns out the subtle frequencies of creativity. In this silence, your mind begins to wander without an itinerary. You start connecting disparate ideas. You reflect on a conversation you had 3 years ago, suddenly understanding the hidden subtext. You notice the way the amber light casts long, distorted shadows across the wooden floorboards, finding a strange, melancholic poetry in the geometry of the room. This profound introspection is entirely inaccessible when you are sitting in a crowded bar, shouting over the bass to make small talk about the weather. Your solitude is the fertile soil where your deepest thoughts take root. And it is not just the grand philosophical thoughts. It is the quiet appreciation of the micro moments, the small rituals that the rest of the world rushes past in their desperate sprint toward the next big event. This society that romantically praises the frantic energy of a weekend getaway completely ignores the profound, quiet victory of a perfectly brewed cup of coffee on a Sunday morning. They ignore the deep satisfaction of sitting in the exact center of your favorite chair, watching the dust motes dance in the shaft of afternoon sunlight. They underestimate the therapeutic value of slowly folding laundry while a documentary plays in the background. These are not empty moments. These are the anchors that keep you tethered to yourself. For someone with a low stimulation preference, these small rituals carry the same emotional weight as a massive social gathering does for an extrovert. You find your joy in the microscopic details. You find your peace in the predictable rhythms of your own making. You take another sip of your tea. It has cooled slightly, perfectly matching the temperature of the room. You look around your living space, the modest furniture, the stacks of books, the single lamp. It is not a glamorous life by the metrics of the modern world. There will be no photos of this night posted to a timeline. There will be no digital proof that you existed vibrantly on this Friday evening. And for the first time in your life, you realize that you do not care. You have spent years trying to force yourself into a mold that was designed for a completely different psychological architecture. You spent years feeling guilty for wanting to leave the party early. You spent years apologizing for the way your nervous system fundamentally operates. But the epiphany has finally settled into your bones. You are not defective. You are not broken. You're not missing out on life. You're simply choosing depth over width. You're choosing the profound clarity of silence over the superficial noise of the crowd. You're choosing to honor the specific, delicate machinery of your own mind. The people down on the street, drinking under the neon signs, they are searching for a feeling of connection. They are searching for a sense of home in the eyes of other people. But you do not need to search for it out there. You are already sitting inside of it. That wraps it up for today. The story you just heard is fiction. But if you've ever lived alone in a foreign country, you know that the loneliest moments aren't the empty apartments, but the exhausting realization of how hard you have to fight just to protect your own peace. If this one hit different, drop a comment and tell me which part stayed with you. I've got more stories like this coming, so hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one.